Hey guys, how the hell are you? Let's do an all-new unbiased gear review today. On this, the LTD EC-01. But first, let's go over some specs of this instrument. We have a solid mahogany body with a set-through mahogany neck. We have an ebony fretboard with 22 stainless steel extra jumbo frets. 24 and 3/4 inch scale. We have locking tuners. We have a tune-o-matic bridge. We have a single lone master volume, and we also have this exclusive to ESP Seymour Duncan custom 14 humbucker. So with that, let's just get right to the things that I normally look for in an instrument. Taking a look at the finish. There's no burring of the edges whatsoever. There was no issues with the finish. Looking at the back, it's super duper smooth. No little sunken lines from any seams or anything like that. Taking a look at the fretwork. The fretwork was fantastic all up and down the board. No rough fret edges whatsoever. Nice and clean. A little bit rounded off even, and also perfectly level all up and down the board. There's not a single dead spot anywhere to be found anywhere on the board. So every chord rings out nice and clean, nice and clear and true. Tuning stability, this thing holds pretty damn well. I have recently replaced a fresh set of strings on here, so it's a little wobbly now. I need to stretch the strings a little bit more, but all the same, holding up nicely. The neck profile is what the ESP website describes as a thin U, but really it's an extremely thin C. It's something that you love. Any instrument sort of kind of like this from the LTD portfolio that you've ever picked up is going to have this same profile on it, whether it be an Eclipse, whether it be a Viper, whether it be an EX. It's all the same neck profile. So in that regard, it's very comfortable, it's very familiar, it's not going to throw you for a loop. Also, the 24 and 3/4 inch scale to go along with that neck profile, there again, very familiar, very comfortable. Taking a look at the appointments on this instrument, I really like the fact that it is a tune-o-matic with string through. Something about instruments that have this sort of configuration to me just have a little bit more resonance. It might be something that's all in my head, but I swear I feel like I pick up a guitar that has a stop tailpiece along with the tune-o-matic versus the actual ferrules that are feeding the strings up through the body, and it just always seems to feel a little bit more resonant. I'm sure there's some studies out there that will prove or disprove that, but to me, that's what I feel when I play this thing. Really like the volute there for a little bit more stability on that headstock. One thing that might throw some seasoned LTD owners and players a little bit is that this is an Eclipse style body, but with a flat top. So something that we haven't seen really to any great degree in probably decades. And for those of us that are used to the more carved top Eclipse models, that might take some getting used to. It actually took me a little bit of time to get used to it because I was just like, man, that's just so weird. I was expecting this thing to have that sort of hump there that I could rest my arm on, and the fact that it's not there is just throwing me a little bit. One of those things you just have to get used to. Speaking of things that you have to get used to, let's talk about the Seymour Duncan SH14 that's in here, which, as I mentioned before, it is a exclusive for ESP pickup, and it has a rather unique tone to it. So I'm not going to describe it, we're just going to go in so you can hear it. So firstly, the instrument itself is extremely resonant, and I gotta love that. I mean, just big vibration up against my body as I'm playing. Unplugged or with the volume turned down, it fills the room. It's got plenty of resonance from that sort of standpoint. This pickup, though, the Seymour Duncan Custom 14, is really interesting to me. On paper, it sounds like something I should really love. A little birdie has told me that what this pickup is one coil of a Nazgul and one coil of a JB. And I am definitely getting some vibes from both of those pickups in there. More so, I'm actually getting some vibes that are like right in between. Actually, probably not in between, but more so something that's getting everything about a Duncan distortion and everything about a Duncan Custom or Custom 5, Custom, any of those iterations, and melding those together, but with a ceramic magnet in there. And it's really odd to me, this pickup. It's got some power behind it. It's got a bit more low-end oomph than you would get from a Duncan distortion. A little bit more of a mid-range character to it too. Like when I hear a Duncan distortion, I think of something that's got a lot of top-end sizzle, and this definitely has that. So that's what I'm referring to when I say it kind of sounds a little bit of like, I wouldn't even call it the best of both worlds. It's kind of got everything from a Duncan distortion and everything from a JB or a Custom or something like that, but there is so much sizzle, there is so much distortion that is hitting my signal path that I feel like I'm losing a little bit of clarity with that. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of metal and rock players are going to find a lot to love about this pickup. But for me personally, I kind of feel like this is the one thing about the instrument that is slightly not hitting the mark for me. But that being said, let's also hear what this instrument does in a full mix. My final thought on this instrument is that I found it to be a rather killer instrument, really inspiring. Definitely built to the exacting standards that you find on a lot of ESP instruments. Nice clean work, very resonant, definitely responds well to the way I play. It's a bare bones basic no bullshit rock and metal instrument. Definitely begging to have brutal chug riffs played on it. That said though, I am just not really the biggest fan of this Duncan Custom 14. I feel like it could just stand to be a little bit more in my wheelhouse, and it could respond a little bit better to the amps that are in my rig, the pedals that are in my rig. I just kind of feel like I'm getting certain tones out of it, but not everything that I want. I'd like something a little bit more articulate, a little bit cleaner, so that I can get that sort of push from the amp and from my pedals themselves. In that regard, if I was to be hanging on to this instrument, I would probably be swapping it for a different Seymour Duncan that I know and love. You know, probably something like an Alternative 8, because I've always loved that pickup. Or, honestly, since this thing is just begging to have stupid Neanderthal chug riffs played on it, hell dude, throw in a Blackout, chug it up to your heart's content. I can see that going really well in this all mahogany instrument. But Arnold, what are you drinking today? I am so glad that you asked. Today, you know, I don't know if I've ever had this on this channel or not. It's one of my favorite brews from Pint House Pizza, which is kind of an Austin area staple at this point. Great pizza, but they're also known for the beers that they brew there. Probably the most famous of which being Electric Jellyfish. Not my favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing that they do is this one. It's called Burro's Breakfast, which is a Mexican style lager, but I kind of feel like they do it better than most. I do know what I'm getting into with this because, like I said, this is probably my favorite beer that they make. Crisp, clean look to it, beautiful color on that. The head just kind of disappears right away. Cheers. So like what I get out of this beer is honestly everything that I want in a Mexican style cerveza. It's refreshing, it's crisp, it does have some slight hop floral notes in there, but extremely muted. Why? Because one thing that this beer does a little bit better than most cervezas is that maltiness. There is a little bit of sort of a bready, sweet kind of maltiness to it, a little bit bigger mouthfeel, and that tends to kind of kill any sort of hoppy bitterness before it can even form. Let's go in again. It's not the most crisp lager you've ever had, but is it one of the most refreshing while still having a big mouthfeel and maltiness to it? Hells yes, I absolutely love this. Burro's Breakfast from Pint House Brewing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel. There is lots more metal and guitar oriented content to come. And as always, please remember, take what you do seriously. Do not take yourselves too seriously.